Hello, everyone. This is Adrienne Ransom, and I am a graduating senior in English with a concentration in creative writing. And for my final presentation, I went with a short story called Where the Lights Don't Hold. Where the Lights Don't Hold is a modern adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Murders in the Rue Morgue. I reimagined Poe's locked room mystery, an unusual culprit within a contemporary urban horror setting centered in Little Rock, Arkansas. Instead of Poe's orangutan, my story uses genetically modified electric bat like creatures created through experimental energy research at a private lab. The story follows Whitney, a utility worker called in to investigate some strange outages along the city grid, and she meets up with a mysterious consultant named Devin, who seems to understand more about the incidents than he lets on. As the bodies begin appearing across the city with unusual puncture wounds and severe blood loss, Whitney slowly realizes that the electrical failures and deaths are connected. One of my main goals was adapting Poe's detective structure into a modern setting while keeping the atmosphere of dread and uncertainty that defines many of his stories. I also wanted the city itself to feel alive through the descriptions of the substations and rail yards and power systems. The electrical grid becomes both a literal setting and a symbolic nervous system running beneath the story. While supernatural elements are hinted at through Devon, the tone of the narrative and the mystery ultimately receives a scientific explanation, similar to how Poe resolves the impossible crime in Rue Morgue. The project combines detective fiction, horror, science fiction, and urban fantasy influences while remaining grounded in Poe's original themes of perception, fear, and logical reasoning. Okay, on this slide is just showing some of my direct inspiration and like my vision board and different films and books that I thought about while I was writing the story and kind of coming up with the plot to everything. One story that I did enjoy a lot was T. Kingfisher's story. It's a different adaptation, but I like how she modernized it with the fungus outbreak. Yeah, I just really stuck to that story, so that kind of inspired me to kind of want to do the same thing with my own. And then there's Frankenstein that kind of influenced a lot of the scientific horror elements of this story, like especially the idea of researchers basically creating something that they ultimately can't control anymore. And that kind of led me to thinking about different, some different adaptations of, or rather, some inspirations that, or stories that have that same type of theme, like the Planet of the Apes and obviously Jurassic Park. So it's just kind of, I guess, the element I was in. The significance of my project comes from how it translates Poe's ideas into a modern context while preserving the core structure of the murders in the Rue Morgue. Poe's original story helped establish detective fiction through the character of Dupin and the idea that seemingly supernatural or impossible events can be explained through careful observation and reasoning. I wanted to preserve that structure while updating the source of fear for a modern audience. In Poe's time, the orangutan represented something foreign, unpredictable, and difficult to categorize. And in my short, the role is replaced by the bioengineered creatures that are tied to all this experimental technology and the infrastructure of the city. And that is a reflection of modern fears that surround like scientific experimentation. And I think Frankenstein also comes into play here again due to him not understanding the consequences of his creation. The setting also plays an important role in this short, and I chose Little Rock because of the industrial space and the aging electrical systems that all helped create an atmosphere that felt grounding and unsettling at the same time. I wanted the environment itself to contribute to the tension in the same way that Poe's urban settings shape the mood of his stories. And the title itself, Where the Lights Don't Hold, reflects both the failing electrical grid and the instability beneath the surface of the city. Another important aspect of this project is the relationship between the two main characters. As Whitney, she approaches the mystery from a practical and technical perspective, while Devin represents a more ambiguous understanding of the horror and the uncertainty. Overall, this project demonstrates how Poe's themes and narrative structures still adapt well to modern genres and anxieties. The grid was holding for now. Thank you all very much for riding along with me for this long. And I have to say that this class was very interesting. It was challenging. It was unexpected, even though I didn't really know what to expect. But I'm glad I was on this ride along with you all. So thanks again, and good luck out there.